Okay, this is Dr. Ray, and I actually made a video, but I think I wanted to make a shorter video because the other video I got very detailed. But I want to make also I have decided to make a shorter video concerning critical thinking. So I'm going to be a lot more concise here. As it relates to critical thinking, what is it? Now, critical thinking, there's many definitions for it. So I'm going to give you a definition that I have synthesized. Critical thinking is your ability to take your previous experiences, the information that you have on hand, to problem solve so you can live a efficient and effective life. That's basically it. So you can live a life that is as comfortable and as that will provide you the least amount of stress possible, the least amount. That's what critical thinking does, whether it be in your personal life or professional life. Critical thinking will allow you to experience the least amount of stress. Okay. And it gives you a process of dealing with problems and dealing with stress. So people who have good critical thinking, they deal with less problems because they're able to be proactive. Now, we all, regardless how smart we are or intellectual, or regardless of our ability to critically think and creatively think, we're all going to deal with problems. So as human beings, but if you have the ability to critically think, you'll be more equipped in dealing with those problems and finding solutions to those problems. And we're going to talk about that again briefly now. So I'm going to show you a infographic concerning critical thinking. These are the 5 elements of critical thinking, and they are prerequisite for so each element is required for the next element. So each element is a prerequisite for the next element. So 1 is a prerequisite of 2, and 2 is a prerequisite of 3, and so on and so forth. So the first element is observation. In order to be a good critical thinker, you have to be able to observe every aspect of life, whether it be walking in the house at night by yourself and making sure no one's following you, to noticing, listening to the inflection of your teacher's voice as she explains something, explains a topic, and the inflection may indicate that point that she's explaining may be on the exam. Observation, maybe noticing that while you're at the checkout line at the supermarket, you're being overcharged, or that the cashier scanned that item in twice. Observation to be noticing that something is wrong with your friend because of the way she is, the words she's using, or how the look on his face. So observation is a key part of critical thinking because it allows us to be proactive, and it allows us to predict things that may affect us in the future, whether it be in the near future or in the distant future. 2, analysis. Analysis is you have to be able to observe to analyze. So to analyze something, you have to have very good observation skills and be able to point out the nuances or the variances, so you can interpret the information and data. And then analysis, meaning being able to understand the information, being able to organize the information, being able to aggregate the data, all these things, interpret the information, come up with statistical models, whatever, come up with graphs, so you can do something with the data. right? So analysis allows us to put the information that you have observed in usable formats. So later or right now, we can do something with the information that's going to help us. Once we have analyzed the data, we can make inferences. We can draw conclusions based on the data and based on our prior patterns that or prior experiences, our prior knowledge base. So we can draw conclusions. So, you think about the scientific method. And the first step is hypothesis, but the hypothesis really came from an observation and an analysis that was able to make an inference, which you can call the hypothesis. And then once we are able to infer and draw conclusions based on the information, the evidence that we have, the lack of information, then we can communicate the issues that we're having with other people, whether it be verbally, whether it be through now with technology, whether it be through a TikTok post or a Facebook live post or whatever the case, YouTube live, whatever the case may be, and or do a text message or do an essay or do a letter or do a phone call or do nonverbal communication. Remember, 80% of communication is nonverbal. But however we communicate that information, we need to be strong in our communication skills so we can effectively communicate. An effective communication would include being coherent, being cohesive in our thoughts, being cogent, being concise. And then finally, once we're able to communicate the issue, then we can then go about utilizing the most appropriate process to solve the problem. And the great thing about having communication be a prerequisite for problem solving is that it indicates the idea that we have to collaboratively solve problems, that most problems that are solved collaboratively. You're not an island amongst yourself. Go out there, look on YouTube, look on Google, attend conferences, have people around you that are smarter than you, and gain as much knowledge as you possibly can in order to solve the problem. And that's the point that I want to really emphasize as we talk about how to improve one's critical thinking. You can improve your critical thinking by number one, being open-minded. Now, what I mean by being open-minded is by having a world view. Having a world view meaning that you're willing to broaden your interest level, the things that you're interested in. So let's say you only like Italian food and you won't dare go into a Japanese restaurant. Well, you're missing out on some delicious food, right? So broadening your horizons so you can have more experiences, and these experiences will help later on help you solve a future problem. The more information that you can get into your brain, that you can store into your brain. And remember, your brain is a pattern-seeking device. This is important to understand. Your brain is a pattern-seeking device. And what it does is it looks for whether it has experienced that pattern before. And if that experience was positive and efficient and effective, it will take you through that process again. If it wasn't, then it will find different alternative routes to keep you safe and have you experience as the least amount of stress possible. Your brain's primary job is to keep you safe, alive, and happy, and do it as efficiently and effective as possible. It's a pattern-seeking device. Your job is to gain as many opportunities and possibilities in alternatives, and various, what's the word I'm looking for? Can't escape me right now, but many different ways to do things and experiences. Your job is to put many different experiences in your brain's long-term memory, so it can go out there and help you solve more problems. This is the same way Google works. Google needs as many experiences through the Google bots, and it goes into, and it allows you to type anything up, and these bots are able to connect the patterns to give you a result in your search result. And your brain works the same exact way. Iterations, that's the word I was looking for. Iterations. You want as many iterations as a pattern as possible, right? You want as many as iterations. Great example of this is, imagine if you only know one way of going home, right? From the college campus to your house, you only know one route, right? Wouldn't it be great to know 5 routes just in case the road was closed or there was heavy traffic? You could find an alternative route. But that's what iteration means. Iteration means there are different ways of getting the same result, which in this case is going home. So you want to give your brain as many iterations as possible. And the great thing about iterations is, if you give your brain a couple of iterations, it will begin to form more iterations for you. It will begin to be able to say, all right, we'll go this way and go that way. And so, but you have to give it inputs. You have to give your brain inputs. So that's what the first way to become good at critical thinking is to give your brain as many inputs as possible. And that is, to do that, you need to be as interested as possible, as interested as you can in many things. Have a worldview. Don't just say, oh, I don't like Japanese food, or I don't like Mexican food. Go and taste it and try it. Now, keeping in mind that we don't want to try and do things that are unsafe or go against our belief system, whether it be political or religious. We don't want to do that because that's going to create problems down the road. So we want to do things safely, and we want to do things that don't violate our religious or political or social belief systems. Okay, so but that does not stop you, prohibit you from at least knowing what the thing is and knowing how it works. So try to be open-minded enough where you can at least know what something is and know how it works, and stop there. And then for other things that do not go against your religious perspective or your social or political perspective, you can go deep into it, and you can have experience more iterations and enjoy it more, whatever the case. But in order to be a good critical thinker, you want to give your brain as many inputs as possible. So get interested in many things. In today's time, in 2022, you know, I tell people you can read books, and when you read, if you don't like to read, well, you should like to read. Get hyped about reading. But we also have audio books and podcasts, and so, you know, Audible and YouTube and like I said, audio books, podcasts. Get interested in many things, and it doesn't all have to be academic. Some can be fun. Have a worldview, a huge perspective. Okay, and then the things that you're really interested about, get a lot of iterations of that thing, a lot of different ways of doing it. Like, again, you're probably very interested about finding your different routes to go home, just in case that primary route that you take has a lot of traffic, the road's closed. You have different alternatives. So iteration is an important word to becoming critically a good critical thinker. The next thing you want to do, did I say read? Podcast, knowledge share. I can't stress that enough. You have to be a reader. You have to become interested in many things to give your brain inputs. Okay. Reading is important because you begin to learn the words the key words in context, the words that people use to express certain ideas. Now remember, what was number 4 in becoming an element of critical thinking was communication, right? So you need to know how other people communicate ideas, the key words they use, the phrases they use. This will help you do what? Observe. Going back to number 1, it will help you to observe. Okay, so then you can analyze, infer, uh, 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 communicate, and then problem solve. Okay, so read, uh, listen to podcasts, uh, read. I can't say it enough. Get gain friends who are smarter than you. You do not want to be the smartest person in the room. Okay, if you find yourself that you're always the smartest person amongst your peers, the smartest person in your room, find another room. Okay, get around people who are smarter than you. Get around people who disagree with you, your belief systems. That don't mean you have to be their friends, but learn from everyone. Okay, and learn from people who are smarter than you. All right, befriend people who are smarter than you. If their religious or social or political beliefs are not what you believe, that doesn't mean you don't have to learn from them. You don't have to be their friend either, but you can still learn from them, understand their perspectives, because you can use that to make your position strong, or you can use that to change your perspective. Because again, your main key in life is to live a life that has the least amount of stress possible. And there's sometimes that we don't have any control, and there are other times where we do. So you don't want to follow a pattern that continuously puts you, and you're putting yourself in stressful, harmful situations. Do good critical thinking. You can be proactive, and you can lead down a road that is way more productive for you. Iterations, productivity. It's important in critical thinking. Okay, knowledge share. Go to conferences. Read. That's right. I'm gonna say it again. Read. Get friends who are smarter than you. Okay, and over time, get interested. Travel as much as you can. Learn about people. Learn about things. Why is this important? Again, your brain is a pattern-seeking device. It needs as much inputs as possible. The more inputs it has, the better your ability. Listen to me here. The more inputs your brain has, the better your brain's ability to observe, to analyze, to infer, to communicate, and to problem solve. I trust me. When you are static in your thinking, meaning you're not active in your thinking, you're idle in your thinking, then you will not grow intellectually, and your critical thinking will be weak. If you're active in your thinking, if you're seeking a worldview, if you're interested in many things, if you're willing to listen to people that disagree with you, listen to other things to strengthen your position and even challenge your position, then you will become a stronger critical thinker. And I guarantee you, your life will be one that is based on being proactive, and you will experience less stress than others. Hopefully this helps you out. Oh, one more thing before I close. Some students may ask, well, how do I answer a critical thinking question on a test? And my response to that is, critical thinking questions are very difficult. They're difficult for the teacher to write or the test maker to write. So if any teachers are listening to this, any test writers are listening to this, or people who write tests for students, please do not make MCQs or true or false questions critical thinking, the critical Please do not make critical thinking questions true or false or MCQs, because we have to keep in mind that even in things like inference, okay, that a person is drawing back, the learner is drawing back on all experiences relative to that pattern to answer the question. So if you're looking at it from your experience, someone else may be looking at it from their experience, and you may have a question, or I mean a selection that the test taker honestly and logically, based on their experience, feels that they're their answer, and where you're looking at another question. It can become very problematic. So my suggestion for test questions is that they should be short constructed responses or long constructed responses, and give the student the ability to exercise the logic and the reasoning on why they have that response. And you will find the answers more enriching, not as easy as marking an MCQ right or wrong, or a true and false question right or wrong, but you will find that it's more enriching for the student, and it allows you to assess the student's ability, a critical thinking ability, better. For students, when you, regardless of whether you are facing let's say, an inference question or a critical thinking question, remember, you're using the evidence that you have that's presented in front of you, and you're drawing a educated guess based on the information that you have in front of you. So most of the times, the critical thinking question that you're going to get is inference. And inference, or the ability to infer, is only asking you to draw a conclusion based on the information that you have, and based on what a rational, common person may respond to that information. Okay. So, and this is why critical thinking questions, especially inference questions, can be problematic, because you have to, because normally in a text or picture, things are implied. There are things that are implied about the picture. There are things that are implied about the conversation. There are things that are implied about the situation, right? You know, the situation, meaning there's nothing verbal, there's action going on, but it may not be verbal. So there are things that are implied. So you have to look at the evidence that is in front of you, right? To make a what? To make a educated guess based on the evidence that you see in front of you, or that you're reading in front of you, and then based on what a common person in that situation would believe about that situation. Okay, so let's give a quick example. You are walking down the street, and you see a coffee shop, and everyone in the coffee shop is shivering, and they look cold, and they got coats on, and they got hats on, and they drinking, and they're holding on their coffee, and you see some people by the fireplace, right? And you also notice and know that it's December, right? It's middle December, right? What could we infer about what you see in the coffee shop? Well, we can infer that the heat is not working in the coffee shop, and it's cold in the coffee shop, and the heat is broken, or the heat's not turned on. This is an inference. This is a reasonable, rational inference that you can make based on the evidence that you have in your patterns that you have experienced in your brain. By being the middle of December and notice people are shivering and people have their coats on, right? You could say, the heat's not working in the coffee shop. It's cold in the coffee shop. That's a reasonable inference. Now, that may not be the case. They may be playing charades in the coffee shop. But but you would not say as an inference they're playing charades, because you don't have, you may not have that evidence, right? You may not have that evidence. You may have enough. You may not have enough evidence to suggest that they're playing charades. So you have to take the evidence that you have on hand and make a reasonable, draw a reasonable conclusion. That's an inference, right? And then we talk about drawing conclusions. Normally, drawing conclusions is taking a whole bunch of information to make a broader conclusion, right? A whole bunch of specific information to draw a broader conclusion. And again, imagine, so having as many inputs as possible is essential to being a good critical thinker. That means you have to read, you have to explore safely, you have to be open-minded, have a world view, listen to people that you disagree with. They will help you grow, right? They'll either help your position stronger or help you say, well, maybe I need to, that he made a good point. Maybe I need to tweak my position on this a little bit better. Be around people who are smarter than you. Read. Listen to podcasts. You got podcasts up there, Audible, YouTube, all right? Gain as many perspectives so you can put these inputs in your brain, because your brain is a pattern-seeking device and it needs as many inputs as possible so it can become a great, efficient, critical thinker. Hope this video actually went longer than I wanted it to go, but in any event, hopefully this helps you out with critical thinking. If you have any other problems, you can leave a message in my channel here, or you can reach out to me at Raynor Roberts at calltoenglish.com. You can send me an email, or you can send me a WhatsApp at 966-540039-777.